So it looks like it's actually going to be a purple evening this evening, right? Yeah, I got an inside story. So in 1979, I was 15, and in my Full Metal Walkman was the single "I Want to Be Your Lover" for the whole year. And all I could think of, I was in love with this song, but I just was in love with that face. The face on the cover of that album, and that flowing, like, curly hair, and those eyes. It was so innocent, and it was just like, right? And I didn't know what sexuality was. I was like 15 years old, but I was so attracted to that, and I couldn't stop staring, and I loved it. And then 2 years later, in 1981, he made his debut on Saturday Night Live, and he came out in a trench coat and a G-string, and it freaked me the fuck out. And I'm just like, what? Like, I barely knew what a gay person was. Like, I thought Quentin Crisp was like just flamboyant, right? No joke. Like, I don't know, Paul Lynde was just effervescent. Like, no joke. I'm not fucking around. Seriously, Charles Nelson Riley, no, Liberace, just like jewelry, right? But I was still like, so it scared me, but I was still drawn to it, and I was so attracted. And it was a couple of years later, was like 93. I went to see him at Radio City Music Hall, and he came out in this like yellow pantsuit, like they covered him with like no underwear. And I had a good friend of mine who was married. We was going out with a Rockefeller, so we had seats in the front row, and he came out, and for the first time, I just started screaming and yelling, and it reminded me of the very first time I saw him in concert, which was actually in '88 in Birmingham, England, and part of the reason I went to Europe was to see, I heard he was going to be there, so I was like, wherever he's going to be, I'll just get a ticket, and I'll go. And then the first day I land in London, I open NME, and it turns out he's in Birmingham. So I get a train ticket, and I go out there, and I scalp a ticket, and I get into the show, and he comes out, and it was Love Sexy Tour, so he comes down in this giant convertible that he's laying on here, and he sings Anastasia in this bed, and for some reason I lose it. Like, I just can't control myself, and I'm screaming, and I'm yelling, and I'm dancing, and I'm going crazy, and literally in this British crowd, I am the only one moving. Like, it's a stadium full of fucking people. And I'm just like, right? And he's got, even by then he had so many songs that the first half was a medley. And then right at the end of it, he jumps in a dumpster and like rolls off stage. And I'm just like exhausted. And then everybody gets up and applauds. And these two young British girls, they look at me, they're like, "You're not from round here, are you?" And I'd be like, but ever since then, and every time I saw him since, I just lost it. I lost it in Radio City. Was it 2 years later? He was at Jones Beach. And he's standing on stage, and he was just the symbol at that time, so he had slave written on the side of his face, and he told every woman to stand up. He goes, "Stand up and turn to your man and yell, 'Free the slave!'" Right? Like, "Free the slave!" And he had all these women standing up, and I was with my flamboyant gay friend at the time, and I mean, I'm straight, but he didn't have anybody, so I'm screaming at him like, "Free the slave! Free the slave!" Right? And after that, I just knew whenever I would go see him, I'd just be like, I'm going to lose it. Like, I'm just going to scream and yell, and that's just what's going to happen. And when he died, there were a lot of people, a lot of good people that were dying right around that time. And everybody was loyal fans of whether it was George Michael or David Bowie. And when Prince died, there were a lot of people who were confused because they're like, I don't know if I was the biggest fan, but like, why am I so sad? And it hit me that a lot of musicians, a lot of artists, they come to us in different ways. Like, their music comes to us through here, or down here. And I do believe he was the only one that entered us through every orifice. And whether I connected the dots or not, I gave myself license to just be there, like naked, whenever I saw him. And if anybody else has seen him, you know what I mean. Even if you never thought about it, it just came out. And it was through him where I connected my sexuality to my spirituality. And even though I'm straight, and I tried being gay, it just was like flipping magnets. But I would see him, and I'd just be like, "Oh my God, shake your ass, you sexy motherfucker!" Right? And so, 2005, I come out to Los Angeles, and I had hooked up with this new phenomenon called Craigslist. Anybody know Craigslist when it hit town in 04 or 05? It was like the UTA job list. It was under the radar. And you just had to know what it was. So like the job listings were like all executive positions. And of course I was looking for a job at the time, and then right underneath was like men seeking women. And it started me on this journey because everybody was so creative there. And it was before pictures. And where you just answer an ad, and then it would take a half an hour before an email would come back with a picture on a flip phone, and like took an hour. But so I went on a series of like late night, midnight adventures to meet strangers like all over town. And it was amazing. I met a slew of people who became good friends and lovers, and also, weird people in Venice who were sharing a room where there's only one shared bathroom, they got 5 cats and, like in a bunk bed. But you don't know when you show up, like what you're gonna get, right? And there was this one ad that just said in the title, I'm at a crossroads, I'm about to make a big decision. And in the text it said, I'm about to do something I'm not really sure, but I'm very scared. And I just need to split a bottle of wine and howl at the moon. And I was like, hell yeah. And so I answer that, right? Start at midnight. I get a response back and forth. And I had an idea of what it was, enough. So I headed out. She lived in WeHo off of Fairfax. And I get to the door. I knock on the door. The door opens. This absolutely beautiful, demure black woman with long hair and these big brown eyes. And we should look at each other and smile. And in that moment, we knew that we were going to be the best friends for the rest of our lives. In that smile, right? So I walk right in, and I knew what she was talking about. She was wrapping things up because I knew she was moving for whatever reason, and she was. She was about to move in with her boyfriend. She was really nervous, right? So I started helping her pack. We went over to Damiano's at like 1:30. Anybody know Damiano's? Nodding heads. There you go. The best, slimiest, fucking dirty, skanky ass place. Like completely in the dark for a reason. Right there, the laziest lasagna in the world with just a pan. Everybody knows it was just a pan, right? So, and they had all the layers of pasta, but they didn't bother filling them in. Like, why the fuck would they do that? So you just throw it in there, and we'd throw sauce and cheese on top of it, and it was fucking awesome. But while you're standing there waiting and you hear like the scurrying of what must be sincere, but you're like, look away, look away. So we come back, we're eating the pasta. She goes, let me put on some music. You go, like Prince? And I'm like, of course I fucking like Prince. And so she puts in this cassette and it starts playing and she goes, come with me. And she takes me down the hall of her like railway apartment, and it's a 2-bedroom, and we go past the door of this one room and it's just filled with clothes on these racks, and they're all like different colors, and there's boas and stuff. And she goes, you see all these clothes, right? They're his. I'm like, what? And she goes, and her name was Sugar, by the way, right? And she goes, my name is Marie, I think, and but my name is Sugar because that's the name he gave me, because he's my best friend, and when I get married, he's gonna sing at my wedding, and you're coming. And I'm like, hell fucking yeah. I'm coming, right? And so from that moment, we became very good friends. She moved in with an architect, a gentleman named Vincent, who I've come to learn his name is Vincent Van Hart. He was an architect. He designed high-end recording studios in Los Angeles. And he's a Dutch guy, super sweet. They're absolutely the best, most loving couple. They moved in a house in Laurel Canyon. It turns out it was built by Freemasons. And she was an empath. So that was her job. And I didn't know what that was. And so she told me that she basically just works in her house. She doesn't like to leave her house if she couldn't help it because there's so much energy. And it would just be overwhelming for her. So people would come to her, like everybody in town, like half of the Lakers, and like all of these other people that I didn't know. And I loved going to their house because they would have these parties that started like 11 at night. And you would show up at this crazy house, and there would be full of people, and the room would look not unlike this room, of all different ages and sizes and different languages from all these different countries, and everything would just get started around 11. And I remember being in her backyard in the dark, just listening to all these different languages. And after about 5 years here, it was very homogenous. And so it was just wonderful to be in this room where you felt like the whole world was in there. And she would be constantly just telling me things in such certainty, and I knew, oh, I just had to listen. Like she would call me up, and I would come over, and she'd put a little lavender on my wrist and introduce astrology to me. At 3 a.m, she would say, Vincent, I'm hungry, and he loved her so much, he would go and bake a cake. And they would come out, and we'd listen to records, and they'd look for the ones that were warped, and they put them on, and it was just a magical place. So I would always make sure that whenever she called me and she's like, yeah, we're having a party, I was there in a minute, right? So she called me one night and she says, there's a party. And at the time I had just started dating this incredibly, painfully shy woman who was so shy that she became a mailman, right? So that she wouldn't have to deal with anybody. And, right, well, really weird. But she was so sweet, and I understood, right? And I couldn't wait to introduce her to Sugar. So I grabbed her and tell her, we're going up to this party, but it's gonna be okay. And we get there, and of course, it's like midnight, it's in the dark. And we walk up the stairs, we pass this Bentley, is like sitting there. And we didn't really think about it because anybody could show up at this house. And we walk up to the door, and she answers the door and introduces us. And I was really excited. I'm like, here's my friend, I want you to meet her. And she's like, very nice to meet you. And she goes, come with me. And I go follow her into the kitchen. And I was like, she's great, isn't she? And Sugar looks at me and she goes, she's not the one. And I was like, okay. And because it's just like, you know. And so we go into the kitchen. She goes, but I need you to do something for me. Prince is here. And I'm like, what? Yeah, that's what it was. That's literally, I think it was the sound. It was very similar to that. And I'm standing in this kitchen with this really nice guy leaning on the stove. And he introduced himself. His name is John Bryan. And all these, there's just people hanging out. And they're, you know, and Vincent's over there. He's making Trader Joe's pizzas. Right? In the oven. And she goes, here, come with me. She goes, I'm like, well, where is he? He goes, he's not here. He's down in the car. And I was like, oh, really? Oh, man. And she's like, yeah, he's too shy. He's not going to come upstairs. But he's hungry. So here, come on. And so she goes and she takes a couple of slices. You know, she cuts them from each one of the pizzas. And she puts them in his pan. She wraps it up. And she goes, here, okay? Grab some orange juice and go down and give him the pizza. And I'm like, what? I'm like, he's hungry, come on, let's go. And I'm like, okay. So I grab the pizza and I go downstairs and I get up to the car and all the windows are tinted. So it's like, I don't know if is anybody in there? And I look in and I'm like, zzz, the window goes down and he's right there. And I see like the profile of his face and I look and I notice that like his cheeks are clean and I'm thinking, oh, he doesn't have the slave thing. And then, of course, my brain is like, why the fuck was he gonna? He doesn't walk around with this slave thing on his face. It's like going into Ralph's. And so I was like, I didn't know what this. I was like, Sugar said you'd be hungry, and so he's like, yeah. He's like, what you got? And I was like, well, I mean, there's a margarita, and there's some mushrooms, and there's like a garlic and a basil, and he says, no, the garlic's too stinky. And I'm like, okay. So he goes, you could be stinky. And I was like, okay. I'm thinking, and he's like, and he looks at me and I'm like, oh, it's for me to eat. Okay, right. Okay, so I come, my son started leaning on the car and he starts eating and I start eating. And we're both just standing out like on Wonderland Road, right? And then you hear the crickets in the night and we're both just like, and he's just like, and I'm trying to think of something to say to him, and he's just like, man, I love me some Trader Joe's pizza. And I'm like, yes, fucking Trader Joe's pizza is the best. It's like not even fancy, right? And he's like, it don't have to be. And so I'm eating and I'm thinking, I was like, it was 1981, okay? You were on Saturday Night Live in a trench coat and a G-string, and you scared the shit out of me. And he looks at me like, I wasn't in no G-string. I had a shirt, I had a top on and a scarf, and I had like bikini pants and thigh highs. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, I went on a G-string. I'm like, why did I think that? He goes, I don't know. Right? So I'm looking, okay. And he's eating still, and he goes, so Maite hit you with a Tootsie Pop in your forehead? And I was like, Sugar told you that? And he's like, yeah, because at Radio City Hall in '93, we were at the front of the stage, and Maite, his wife, right, came out for the song Seven, and she came out and all the lights had like flashed up against her to create this giant shadow, this giant Indian shadow of her against the back wall. And she comes all the way down the stage. She's got a big bag full of candy, and she's just like throwing it out. And we're all like at the front of the stage, like you know, like all the kids in fucking Oliver, just like hungry orphans. And we're just like, yeah. And she goes flying, she just throws it, and it's like, thump, 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 bam! Hits me right in the middle of the forehead. See stars, literally. And I was like, yeah, she hit me right in the head, man. I had a big welt the size of a softball, and he's cracking up. And I said, but that week, I walked around to everybody, and I was like, Maite hit me in the head with a Tootsie Pop. And he's like, yeah. Well, she goes, well, Sugar's good. She tells me everything. You got to listen to her. I was like, okay. Wait, he hands me the plate. And the window goes, it goes back up, right? So I'm standing with the plate, and I'm like, okay. And I turn around to walk up the stairs, and I'm thinking, did this just happen to me? And in my head, like, I just hear it, and I just start singing under my breath, bow, 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 you sexy motherfucker.